Well, howdy folks, this is Buck Buckner, and I am freaked out, but not so freaked out because this morning I had a waffle, and it's a homemade waffle. It was in my hotel at the breakfast buffet, and it was so tasty. But let's just go on to and it gave me such a comforting feeling, almost like I was in my bunker. It's like I ate my bunker almost. Like doesn't make sense, but when you eat one of these waffles, that's the sensation. It's pretty phenomenal. And, let's go on to the fourth rule of my book, The 9 Rules of Playing. And you've been a wonderful audience. And the fourth rule which is, if you're following along, actually the fifth, because we started with a 0. And I know that's confusing, but it's important to understand that. And the fourth rule are the 4 food groups. The 4 food groups. I learned this as a child, and it's vitally important. The nutrition of the dairy group, the bread group, the meat group, and then the vegetables. And not necessarily in that order, other than maybe the vegetables being last. That's what they call a Freudian slip. And I think there's more truth to that than we know. And I explain that in this chapter. And people ask me, Buck, how about a waffle? Where does that fit? What group is that? And it's a difficult question, but if you break it down, it's kind of a bread-like substance, and I've poked at it with a plastic fork, and it's very bread-like, but there's dairy in there too, and I suspect, and I studied the batter quite extensively under a microscope, a magnifying glass. I had a magnifying glass, and that's as good. If you have a good one, that's as good as a microscope in a lab. And I suspect there are eggs. And I know what you're thinking. Why is there not a 5th egg group? And no, the eggs go with the meat group. And I've thought about that. Or think about it this way. If you have a waffle, often you'll have some sausage links with it. And they had a big pan of sausage links. And it did annoy me a bit at the end. There were not any sausage links when I went back just to replenish. And it seemed to be closing. But it was time for me to leave for my talk, so I'm glad I didn't. So that's the 4th rule, folks. It's good nutrition, the 4 food groups. And the one thing you won't have with a waffle usually is vegetables. And vegetables, that's why they're last. We try to fit them in, and that may or may not be important. I'm working that out still. That's an area of research, and not everything is solved. And that's what makes it fun, really interesting. Well, why don't we take a campfire break, and we'll be right back, folks, with Buck Buckner's 9 Rules of Blank.